Good evening, good afternoon. Welcome to Focus on Liberia. I am the West African correspondent, Damara. Welcome to a special edition on the latest developments on the continent. We are going to watch today in particular about the coup d'etat that took place in Niger yesterday, in the capital city of Niger, Niamey. We all know how important Africa has been grappling to ensure that we have a stable, uninterrupted democracy. Unfortunately, we have seen development to and fro. It is unfortunate, it is quite amazing that dastardly act took place yesterday, maybe because of certain failure on the side of the governance. I think when our coup d'etat we are actually flowing in Africa, starting from 2019 to 2020, 2021, 2022, I did run a show here to maybe tell people about the few countries which democracy actually are in danger because of the development in places like Guinea, Burkina Faso, and Mali. And now, unfortunately, we are seeing that situation is having a spilling effect on them. We name people like countries like Niger because Niger is almost battling the same problem as Burkina Faso, as Mali, then as Guinea. Although Guinea's situation is a big difference because Guinea are not fighting any jihadists. It was just like a corrupt president who decided to violate the constitution, and the soldiers stepped in, who also corruptly installed themselves into power by violating the very constitution that they purportedly claim that they came to maintain. They are now violating the constitution. But when you watch at the situation in Mali, you watch at the situation in Burkina Faso, you see situation in what? In Central African Republic, you watch a situation in Chad, you watch at those in Cameroon and in Nigeria, they are almost the same thing. So when those coups started to take place in places like Mali, in Burkina Faso, we were alarmed because those people face the same problem. And if the military succeed in taking over without any possible faults from the side of the international community, from ECOWAS, and from AU, it is going to inculcate a culture into other military and also give them the confidence, the belief, and also the thoughts that they also can equally overthrow their government. Of course, Niger is one of the few poor countries one of the poor countries that we have on the continent. Please, sorry for using the word few, because there are no few poor countries on the continent. Almost all of them are absolutely poor. But Niger has suffered 7 coups d'etat before this time, and they are having serious problem. In fact, Niger survived basically on what happens from what flowed from Nigeria smuggling oil and whatsoever thing. So it's an impoverished nation. They do not have any rich agriculture. In fact, it's a Uranian country, and we watched the like of Russia existing into Niger, and when military situation in places like Burkina Faso and Mali deteriorated, Chad is having a military problem. Cameroon is fighting the separatists. Nigeria is fighting Boko Haram. It's a situation around this place, and they are also fighting Islamic State and other jihadist movement into their own country. But they are not strong economically, and they depend on the good wills of others. Of course, Niger was the only last hope of France's strong base on the continent, although the United States of America also have an army base over there. But they have also selfish clandestine interest into those countries because their existence or having over 1,000 troops into Niger is just like having an ulterior motive because of the uranium. The uranium that they are trying to mining over there, and they want to prevent the like of Russia and China from exploiting this situation. So basically, those two countries' presence in terms of military in that particular country is not actually to protect the interests of the Nigerians, but to protect another foreign power taking over that particular country, and to ensure that they continue to maintain their economic interests and build their so-called military back home. Now, because of what happened into Guinea, what happened into Mali, and also what happened into Burkina Faso, now we are now seeing Niger have suffered the same coup d'etat that everybody was actually afraid of. but it was almost predictable, and now it has happened. What were actually the circumstances that led to the coup d'etat? We all know the military, they give flimsy excuses when it comes to those things, but they are not actually flimsy as expressed, they are actually in existence. Because since COVID-19, a lot of African economies have dwindled down, because Africa is actually having a kind of donor-driven economy. Unfortunately, COVID-19 took a toll on almost all Western economies, and most of those Western countries depended on themselves maybe to fight COVID-19 or other. Even UN, it's a laughable stock, because most of the support that we get from the international community depend on our own contribution. That is why they hardly take disaster or any other situation on the continent, because they know that what our contribution to places like UN are absolutely infinitesimal or too little to be accounted for. So when we are having problems on the continent, the contribution of the international communities in terms of economic, military, whatsoever, is very minimal. It's a calculated insult, a well-enveloped one on our own side. Just look at what they are pouring on places like Ukraine. Ukraine is just a single nation, but the amount of money that the United Nations, maybe America, US, and you talk about France, you talk about Germany, and other countries that have actually poured on Ukraine cannot be compared to all the disaster that Africa has suffered. It is because we are not impacting the world in terms of either economic and certain political decisions. Now, this is a time bomb for Africa. Honestly speaking, this is a time bomb of Africa. We forgot about coup d'etat far back in the 1950s. Coup d'etat were actually happened in 1950, 1960, 1970, and 1980s. But coming towards the 1990s, we saw some certain war coup d'etat stop. Until in the latest 2020, coup d'etat resurfaced. Now, they are gaining ground into the Sahel region. And most of those countries that coups are now affecting do not have stable military, and they are fighting jihadist movement. And this is a type of situation that have been actually infected on the continent because of a kind of radical mentality that the United States think and feel that they can impose on places like in the Middle East and also in North Africa. When you have stable democracy, or let me just say, because arguably they are democracy, because democracy is a government being elected by the people, by the people, for the people, and of the people. And democracy we are all generally, but you have democracy but with authoritarian leaders. And the United States or the so-called West are actually against dictators, despotics, or authoritarian leaders. But the fact that elections were being conducted, it would have been better for them to let these people live. But when 2011 Arab uprising created Daesh, we saw what happened in Iraq in 2003. We saw how they almost eliminated the Yazidis and other people. And this thing now coming into Africa, especially into the north, and it is now spreading into West Africa, and currently it is based into the Sahel. And the Sahel is not peaceful because you have states there that are actually dominated by Muslims who believe in this holy war, into this jihadist movement. Unfortunately, people are poor, and they also depend on this West to fight for them. And the West are actually into this state. Funnily enough, they are into this state, but they are not fighting for the interests of this state. Rather, they are only there to protect their clandestine interest. Now look, Mali coup d'etat happened there twice, in 2020. In Burkina Faso, twice coup. Then also in Guinea, one. Now it is happening, or it has happened into Niger, 6 in the space of 3 years. Where is Africa headed? In fact, now Benin is also alarmed, because Benin is also facing similar situation like that. Who knows what will happen into Cameroon, where Paul Biya is so old, and you're having the Bazasonians fighting for themselves. Those from Bamenda, they're fighting to ensure that they get an independent state. Then you see Nigeria. Of course, Nigeria is almost a failed state, because you have Boko Haram, you have ASWAP, you have the movement for the emancipation of the Niger Delta, you have IPOP. All of them are actually, then you are also having bandits on the streets in Nigeria everywhere. It's armed robbers. So when you watch at Nigeria, it is almost a failed state with almost everything it had. Funnily or interestingly, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu is the president of ECOWAS. When he took over, what did he say? That he is actually here to stop the continuous coup d'etat that are actually happening into Africa, especially the Sahel region. He said the democracy of this state need to be maintained, protected, and also enforced. He strictly warned all people, especially the militaries, into certain countries that have the ambition of taking over this country to end their ambition, because his one-year governance or helm of the affairs of that particular organization will never pamper nor encourage anybody who intends to take over the country unlawfully. Few days later, just a week, we experienced another coup d'etat in Niger. Initially, yesterday, when the army took over, it was the presidential body guys that took over, arrested the president and kept him under house arrest. The foreign minister, the information minister, and President Bazoum were adamant that they are still in control. The military was also saying they are in control. And everybody was just waiting for the general military or the entire military to actually know whom it intends to support. They claim that the coup d'etat actually took place, or the President Mohamed Bazoum was overthrown yesterday because of his inability, or his government inability, or his government failure to stop the growing insurgency into the country. That is one. They also claim that the government is absolutely corrupt beyond reasonable doubt, and they need to put that corruption to an end, because everybody within the governance system of President Mohamed Bazoum is almost systematically corrupt, and there's nothing moving into the country. And also they said the president has failed to seize the rising cost of staple food into the country, commodities, and the people barely have what to eat. So into this situation, since the military think and feel that the army, the government has let its own people down, they have no option rather than to take over the country. That is what they claim. But almost all these coups d'etat that happen into West Africa have similar intonation. They have similar interests. And we all know that in part in Africa, our problems are pre-written. Honestly speaking, they are pre-written, they can be predetermined, and we know exactly where this problem lies. And our governance system are just not good enough to take over this thing. So the announcement of the coup in Niger come as a big blow anyway to the leadership of the West African regional bloc. Honestly, ECOWAS and rises the constitutional crisis in the region at a very new level. It's a very big blow. It rises the constitutional crisis into this particular region at the very new. In the past 3 years, we have seen overthrown in Mali, Guinea, and Burkina Faso. In the past 3 years, that is from 2020 to 2020, we have seen the like of President Alpha Conde leaving. We also saw how IBK, Abubakar Keita, was eliminated out of power. And similarly, we saw how the president of Burkina Faso was kicked out. And in Burkina Faso alone, 3 coups d'etat took place. The first one against the president, the second one, and another third one again. In Mali, 2. In Guinea, 1. Now, Burkina Faso is making it 6. It's a calculated insult. So, as it had been with countries, soldiers in Niger have cited the deteriorating security situation. This is what they have started. They said deteriorating security situation and bad governance as the reason for taking over the governance of the country. I won't talk about bad. Something I normally tell people, there is a difference between democracy and good governance. Honestly speaking, most African countries adopt the principle of democracy in theory. But there is nothing like good governance. There is no accountability. There is no respect for human rights. There is no freedom of speech. The government is not responsible. There is no transparency. There is injustice. Almost everything is just happening. So you cannot just elect a government that claim that they were democratically elected. But those things that maintain the principles of democracy are not being maintained. It's simple, there is no rule of law. Because where there is rule of law, it is just like when you want to do away everything, just fight for love. Where there is love, hatred whatsoever till we go. You cannot have a democracy where good governance does not exist, where the rule of law does not take place. And when these so-called soldiers, the khaki boys, took over, this is what exactly they have presented. And it's very easy because the market is already available. People are disgruntled, people are hungry, people are being deprived, people are being marginalized, and employment is on the height. So the market is just there. And those who are willing to subscribe to that mentality are so high. I remember, in fact, so interestingly, just like in Burkina Faso, just like in Mali, just like in Guinea, people are demonstrating in protesting for the so-called in support of the military that took over. And as I speak, the ruling party, the PNS Starapal house have definitely, the ruling party house have definitely been attacked, ransacked, and most of the property destroyed because the people have that, what do I call it, vendetta into them. They really want to maybe pay the government because of the failures over the past 2 years. But this man was actually democratically elected in 2021. But Niger was actually living on a time bomb because of what is happening around its surrounding. That was exactly what happened. And if you watch it, if you know at African politics, you see how coup d'etat developed from one stage to another. Everybody knew. Who knows about African politics must have known that the situation in Niger was definitely heading for a serious time bomb because all its neighbors, everything that is surrounding neighbors was definitely, we are not actually good. These are not actually good development. They are not good development for Niger, and they are not actually good development for the state, African state as we are. Anyway, it's something that we need to fear, especially those of us in West Africa. When they say there is some people say like brutality is needed when things are complicated, but one shouldn't take it as a garment of life. And since we have leaders who continue to violate the constitution, violate the social contract that we sign with them, what else do you expect? Violence is the last hope of the common man. And sometimes the military exploit this particular situation. And when they come, they tend to install themselves. They can even be corrupt because in life, we have 3 G's that we should always be afraid. That is God, gun, and government. And now, they have the guns, they have the government. What do you expect to do? Now, they have almost all the absolute power corrupt system. You see, these are some of the questions. But questions are being asked if there are external influences in pushing this military coup d'etat in French colonies. Absolutely, external influences are there. External influences are there. 2 weeks ago, ECOWAS chairman Bola Ahmed Tinubu warned that terrorism and emergency and the emergence of coup d'etat in West Africa had reached alarming levels and demanded urgent and concerted actions. Is this the concerted action we are seeing? Is this the urgent action? Or is this actually a call for action? Now maybe these African leaders, they should start respecting what they were being elected for. The social contract that they signed with their citizens. Because when you violate the social contract, you expect the citizens to react. And the military will make a subversive move to seize power. Africa, we are having a well-urbanized system. Sophisticated youths who are now maybe learning different things from the West. I have a spilling effect. Even the social media, to certain development actually taking place into West that we are now using today, and those development are fighting against us because information that used to be hidden from us in those archaic days, they are no longer hidden for us. Now we are now seeing. So those antiquity acts are no longer tolerated in this modern day society. Our millennium has changed. And most of the time, the behavioral pattern of certain leaders are laying solid foundation for coup d'etat to take place. President Tinubu also sent the president of Benin, Patrice Talon, to mediate in the ongoing. That's why I said, look at Benin. Benny is also another time bomb. So what do you expect him to do? The man is vulnerable for speaking out loud. For crying out loud, he's vulnerable. And must he go to negotiate? I think he needs to be very careful. He shouldn't, when he's going back into Cotonou, he shouldn't hear that he has been overthrown. Because the situation around the Sahel is so bad. And almost all the countries within the Sahel are fighting jihadists, insurgents. And they are dominated by the Muslims who have the intention to create a Sharia state because of the corrupt attitude. And the market is around. The market is there. Because people are suffering. So they have the common mean to brainwash these people. The common means there to brainwash these people. The market is there. So we are seeing this thing. We need to be very careful. And let's see a message from Steve Wilson. He said African leaders need to forget about buying guns. They need to create jobs for the youth, men and women. African leaders have to respect the rules of laws and allow justice for citizens. That is what he's saying. It's a very fantastic one. Of course, we definitely need to have African leaders who we start to respect the system and also to ensure that they create justice for whosoever that is a citizen on the continent. Unfortunately, these things are definitely not happening. So we are also seeing the announcement of the coup in Niger will come as a big blow to the leadership of African bloc. ECOWAS and rising to constitutional crisis in the past 3 years we have seen, and as it been the case with countries like Niger. But these questions actually are huge, and we need to be very careful on how we respond to them. So let's see what also this coup is trying to do. The coup is yet further bad news for French West Africa. Absolutely, it's a very bad news for French and West Africa effort to restore stability. For French West Africa, okay. Now we are also seeing after the coup, or just when the coup took place, Russia presence is felt now. Those who are demonstrating in the name of the coup plotters had Russian flags with them. And the president only hope was the general military. But the army general has now thrown his support to the military or the presidential body guys that took over the president and announced. The only thing, it is very unclear who is actually in charge of Benin. Of Niger, sorry. It is very unclear. But the army has thrown its support to the coup plotters. The reason it gave was that they do not want the army to be splitted or to go into war against itself. So the best they can do now is to support the military takeover and ask Mr. President to accept. And maybe he could be forced to resign on television. We have seen that. But what is the need of resignation again? The so-called UN, ECOWAS, AU, the America, France, and even Russia have condemned the coup. And they are now asking for the immediate release of President Mohamed Bazoum. But the military are yet to comment on the fate of the 64 years old. And he has been accused of corruption. He only came into power for maybe 2 years ago. Why now? This is our big question. Why? You see, the coup, even if turned out to be short-lived, has also shown that France does not have any support into the Sahel again. Because when it was asked out of Mali, asked out of Guinea, okay, let's forget about Mali. When it was asked Guinea, because Guinea is not fighting any jihadist movement. But when France was asked out of Mali and Burkina Faso, they went to Niger. And now, Niger has fallen apart. The central no longer holds. We are having a military, although they have not come out publicly to ask France out of a territory, but they are saying, especially the military, that all foreign powers will stay off of what happens into Niger. They have given strict warning to them. So it is an alarming situation. And France knows that they will definitely be asked out. And Mohamed Bazoum was a stringent supporter of France and the US. So maybe the base that France is currently having into Niger, it is because of its strong affiliation with the president who has been overthrown. Now that he's no longer on the helm of affairs, who knows? They may definitely be asked to leave. In places like Coup, that is Central African Republic, Bongi, they are fighting. And they have asked France to leave. Mali has asked France to leave. Burkina Faso has asked France to leave. All countries that are close to, even in DRC Congo, are asking France to leave. So the situation is so funny. France, maybe, I don't know, but France has been vilified because of its ulterior motive into West Africa. And since then, unlike Great Britain, which has a territory in Africa, but it has less effect in time of determining what happens into those countries, although they have their own influence. But France has been directly felt into those countries. And now they are asking France to leave. You see, for two major insurgent groups that are linked to Al-Qaeda also into this country. So we are seeing a deteriorating situation, and we will definitely tend to see how bad Africa is. Let us see some of the countries that suffer the most coup d'etat on the continent. Burkina Faso, 10 good times. Very sad. 10 good times Burkina Faso suffer coup d'etat. Guinea-Bissau, 9. Mali, 8. Benin, 8. So Benin is very close. This is what I'm saying. Look at Benin and Niger. Very close. Burkina Faso, Mali, Benin, Niger, Chad, very close. And even Sudan, they have Chad share border with Sudan. Very close. So these all things are alarming. Then you watch at Nigeria, share border with places like Chad, Niger. It's just becoming alarming. Guinea-Bissau 9, Mali 8, Benin 8, Niger 8, Chad 7, Sudan 16 times, Nigeria 8, Sierra Leone 10, Ghana 10, Burundi 11, Comoros 9. What? What is happening on the continent? But unlike these other countries, maybe the situation around them may not encourage another coup. But I can tell you for a fact, Benin is not safe. Benin is definitely not safe. Of course, Chad is already having a military. Maybe these people, we may likely end up to have military leader in places. Mali is already there. Benin also definitely we may end up to have a military leader there based on this happening. Then Niger, of course, we already have one. Chad, we already have one there. Sudan is already happening over there. Of course, maybe Nigeria, because of its modern days influence, we are going to see a lot of deteriorating political situation, but for coup d'etat to take place, it's rather a difficult thing. And I don't see it in the near future. However, Nigeria may likely fall apart if you cannot have a government that will come there with stability. This is a blow for France, a blow for West Africa, a blow for ECOWAS, a blow for AU, and this is a very trouble for the Sahel region. Is Sierra Leone, Liberia, Guinea saved? Guinea is having, but Sierra Leone and Liberia, the most important thing maybe that is actually helping Sierra Leone and Liberia is the fact that we don't have a state religion where religious tolerance we get tribes or tribalism into what we do, but except during time of politics, but we are interwoven, we are intertwined into what we do. So apart from those wars that took place, nothing like that will come to these places. But when you have a state religion dominating a particular country that preaches hate, and you almost have a particular situation that encourages unlawful takeoff over our government, situation is going to be bad. Very sad event, sad day for Africa. Thank you. It's been me, Edward. I'm a Focus on Nigeria West African correspondent, coming to you with the latest development on the continent. And this coup d'etat that I highlighted took place since. They started since 1952. The like of Egypt and others, we are not actually mentioned. This is only in West, East, and maybe Central Africa. Good night.